Greetings and welcome to another Drumroll Studios tutorial. So I have got probably 40 requests to do a tutorial on this particular image, which I called Pop Top, and was done probably back in, I want to say 2010 or 2011. So this is the image we're going to be recreating today. And I don't remember all the steps exactly that I took to make it, but I'm going to basically use modern steps, things that I've learned in the meantime to recreate the picture. So first things out of the way, I took the picture using my 50mm. I was set at shutter speed 500 because to compensate for the light outside. It wasn't exactly bright, but it wasn't overcast either, so I just had to futz with the settings for a few minutes until I got the effect that I wanted. My f-stop is at 2.0 and my ISO is at 100. I didn't have any flashes or any unnatural lights. I just used the existing ambient light outside. So this is 3 images. There's the first one. So basically I stood on my tiptoes and leaned my head slightly to my right and put my hand on my head. That was one shot. And then I got another shot of me just standing there, but I had my arm up to try and get the shoulder to match up somewhat, so that there wasn't a big disconnect between the cloth, the material. And then the third one, I went and made sure that the focus did not change on the camera, and I just took a shot the exact same focal length, focal distance as the other two, so that I can have a background plate. This is basically just going to be 3 different images put together. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to duplicate each of the layers just so I have a copy in case I need, for whatever reason, to go and edit them. This is just something I have gotten in the habit of doing. You certainly don't need to. Alright, so the first layer, I'm going to go in with the eraser tool, and I want to have the hardness set pretty far up. You want to have a pretty distinct, crisp line. So I'm going to set it at about, you can probably put it anywhere between 80 and 100. If you want to go all the way to 100, you certainly can. And then using the eraser tool, I'm just going to wipe out right around the mouth area, lower, or the mid jaw, I guess, basically from the earrings up. That's kind of what I want to save. And I'm just going to go in and erase all of the head portion. And actually, since I've got 3 pictures and a plate underneath that will keep my background in place, I'm just going to go in and wipe out the rest of the left side, right side of the picture, but left side of my body. So I'm just going to go and wipe that all out, try and make sure there's no little artifacts left or little things that will show up and show some sort of difference in depth. Alright, I'm going to go down and activate the picture behind, and you can actually see that there's a little bit of white right in this area from the above image. So I'm going to go back up there with the smaller eraser and clean that up just a little bit more. You can zoom in and spend, however much time you want to on little tiny details like that. But for the sake of the tutorial, I'm going to be kind of moving along fast just to show you the basics, and there might be a few points where I need to do something as far as editing for a while or erasing for a little while. I'll probably just speed up the video at that point. You get the idea, but you don't necessarily need to sit and watch every second of what I'm doing. Alright, so that's pretty good for the top layer. You can see there's a little bit of a difference right there in the shoulder where the shirt creases, and obviously you could wear something specifically for the image to make it so that it does align better. I just happened to be wearing the shirt that day and got the shot as quick as I could in the morning so that I could make this tutorial. Alright, so then we're going to go to the other picture, the one with me just standing normal with my arm up, and we're going to do the exact opposite as far as erasing. Instead of erasing the bottom part of my face, I'm going to go in I am going to erase pretty much the flipped opposite, the inverted section. And I'm on a soft brush, so I want to make sure it's on a hard brush, that way the lines match up. And just go in and touch up right around the mouth area so it looks like possibly it existed from the same head, same image. Oops. Alright. So just go in there and erase the rest of that. I'm going to go in and erase around here a little bit more on the outer edges just to make sure it blends well with the background. Sometimes you can have just a really fine line that just has a slight difference of, you know, the wood coloring, and it'll actually show up. It'll make a difference later on down the road depending on what your process is. Some people will just be done with this image and then save it as it is, and that's their finished picture. I usually like doing a little bit of sharpening, some dodging and burning, and sometimes I'll even finish this, save it as a JPEG, and then pull it into Lightroom and mess around with the lights. Sometimes with the colors, contrast, sharpness. Each picture is a little bit different, and obviously it's totally up to personal taste. All right. So we have those two images. You can see that the line here in the shirt, pretty distinct, which is kind of odd considering that I shot in RAW and I processed the pictures with the exact same preset, but that will be easily hidden. So you just want to go to the top layer, select your brush tool, a soft large brush, and with an opacity of about 50 or 51, since I can't select exactly 50. So I'm just going to go in here along the line. And just try and soften that out so that there's not as distinct a difference. Alright. That's a good place to start from, at least. So the next thing to do is you want to go up to Layer, make a new layer. You want to place this one behind the top two layers. You want to have it in front of your background plate. But I'm going to place it behind the other two layers. And then with a brush tool, the color black just on a normal blending mode, and an opacity of 100%, and a hardness of about 50. I'm going to go in, and right behind where the head is at, I'm just going to make what would be the back side of the skull of the head. And I might as well make it a harder line because it looks a little soft, a little fuzzy. You want to have it fairly crisp so it matches with the rest of the picture. You can blur it a little bit afterwards once you're all done. Alright, so it looks like there is still something existing from the previous shot. There it is. I'm just going to go in and erase that. So for all intents and purposes, this is pretty much, these are the basics of what you want to do as far as the image goes. So from here you can do things like you can go back in on the black layer, the behind the head layer, and using a gray, first thing I'm going to do is go in and select just that layer. And then I'm going to invert it so it selects only the black part. And then with a brush, opacity of about 51, 45, I'm just going to go in with the gray and make some, a little too hard. This is just to kind of show there's a texture behind in the head. You can use an actual texture layer if you wanted to as well. You just have to line it up so it's at a diagonal at a diagonal perspective, so that way it's behind the head enough and it looks like it matches up. I think if it was going vertical up and down, it just wouldn't look right otherwise, because the head is tilted at an angle. Alright, and then again with a normal brush, I'm going to go back with a slightly more opaque black brush and just touch up around the edges. Make it look like there's some shadow, but it still kind of shows that there's something in there. I don't remember what I did for the original picture exactly, but looking at it, there must have been something similar to this. Alright, and then you want to deselect that layer. I'm going to grab the blur brush, and with the blur of about 80, I'm going to go on the black brush and just touch up along this line there so it isn't too crisp. Alright, so for the flower, this is a flower shot that I took years ago and I've used several times. So you just want to make sure whatever you're going to have, you can have, you know, an American flag or something like that, any kind of flag popping up out of the head. But for this one I wanted to use a flower, so it's on an all black background. So I'm going to select it, I'm going to invert, and then I'm going to copy. And then I want to paste. Alright, so now that the flower is pasted in there, I'm going to select it and drag it up into about where I want the place to be. I'm going to free transform the size. It's a little bit big. Alright, once I get it where I want it, just going to leave it there. It's just the flower head and the petals just sort of floating around. So now I'm going to zoom in and with the eraser tool, fairly small eraser tool, probably 20 pixels high, and then fairly hard brush. You want it at 100%. You want to have any little artifacts left over. Actually, I'm going to go down to 15. I'm just going to go in and touch up around the petal itself and erase all of those black lines that are left over from the black background. A little bit of darkness isn't bad, it just kind of, it makes it stand out from the background, but if it has a black line, it just looks copied and pasted. So you want to make sure that you take time to touch little things like that up, because it will help in selling your picture and making it seem real, making it seem more seamless at least. It may not seem real, but art is never truly real. Alright, so I'm going to just continue to do this for a couple minutes and touch up all these lines, touch up all the different black parts, and we'll be back right after I'm done. I was really tempted to put a commercial in or something. That would have been funny. Alright, so now that I've got the flower detailed like I wanted it to be, the only thing missing is a stem or something to show that it was actually growing out of the head. So we're going to select a new layer using the brush tool and a width of about 40, opacity at 100. I'm just going to use a dark, let's go with a dark brown, and I'm going to place this layer underneath the flower layer. Flower layer is layer 5, so, but I also want it to be behind the missing head layer. So I'm just going to drag and make a stem of sorts, and then using a lighter brown at a much lower opacity, say 38. Ooh, not quite low enough. At about 20, I'm going to go on along the outer side, I guess, where the light would be, just so I can kind of create a light source to show that there's actual depth. just going to make a little bit of a stem. And then using black, add an opacity of 80% and size at about 20, hardness of about 30 or 73%. I'm just going to go back in along the outer edge. I'm probably going to want to erase some of this just to make it a little bit on the thinner side. So with the hardness of 100%, opacity at 100%, size of about 27. I'm going to go back along the stem. On both sides of it and just make it a little on the thinner side. You still keep that highlight of that brown, even though it's really hard to see at this distance, and it probably won't even show up in the actual picture, but I enjoy making little details like that, so if anybody ever does get to see it huge, they will know I at least took the time to go in and make a little effort on those details. And I'm going to go back in with the blurring tool, and on the outside edges just make that a little bit soft. And I'm going to go back on the flower as well. It looks like the petals are a little on the too sharp side. So I'll just run around the outside edges with a strength of about 70 to 80% and soften up those petals just a little bit. Just helps kind of sell all the picture being in the same depth of field, same focus. One of the most important things you want to remember with layers is that the bottom layer you want to basically think of that as your background. And then as you build the picture forward, the layers go up. So your top layer should be the one in the foreground, especially if you're working with blending modes like overlay or screen. You want to have that in front of whatever layer it's supposed to alter or adjust. Otherwise, there's really no point in doing it. Alright, so that is pretty much the image. You can obviously do all kinds of things depending on what time of the day that I shot it. I could have shadows coming from the flower and hitting my shoulder, but considering that there really weren't harsh shadows except behind me on the trees where there was actual light hitting, I'm not going to go in and do anything more with this. You could pull it into Photoshop more, or you could pull it into Lightroom and adjust layers. Adjust colors. But this is good for me for a tutorial. One of the things that I like to do at the end, and I usually save a PSD of the entire file itself, that way I can have all the layers individually, and if I need to, I can go and touch it up again. But one of the things that I like to do, totally personal preference, I will go and get the selection tool. I will select the entire image. I'll go up to Edit, Copy Merged, which basically everything that Photoshop is seeing right now, everything that you're seeing, it will copy all of that into one file. And then I will go into Paste. And what that does is it takes everything that I just saw and makes it into its own image. So if I were to turn off all of the layers, as you can see over here on the right, all I've got is a black background and the edited layer, the edited file. That is the final image. So this way I can edit everything in it all at once. Some people use adjustment layers. This is just something I learned to do in Photoshop, and I actually like the way it is. It's very fast, it's very efficient. So with this, I will get a brush tool. I will set the mode to color burn, and I will go at about 6 or 7% with a large, extremely soft brush. And then what I do is just kind of go over the image one more time with the color burn, and what it does is it makes the darks just a little bit darker. It pops out some of the shadows, and it makes some of the things that I like as far as seeing a much more like a cinematic or a movie quality burn, I guess, to the blacks. And you can do it a lot harder than 6 or 7%, but the problem there is that sometimes then you get into loss of detail and it burns stuff away. Alright, so then I would slap my logo on it and do any other touches, but this is the basic idea that you would want to do that using 3 different images. You could do it with one. I think if you did it If you did it right, you could do it where it doesn't alter the background, but you have to do a lot of cloning and sampling. You probably could do it with 2 as long as you use the puppet tool for the arm, but I think that's a little bit more complex, and I may adjust that. I may address that at some point down the road, just to do a more involved, a little bit more advanced tutorial. But for right now, this is how you do it with 3 images, and hope that opens up people's minds to ideas. Whenever you look at an image like this, or whenever I see an image like this in my mind at least, and I want to do something like this, I always try and break it down in reverse. Like, okay, I'm going to get this image with my holding my head and a flower growing out, and then I had to figure out each of those individual steps and figure out how many images I need to take in total so that I can try and snap them all at the same time. And the big thing that helps with this particular flower image is that I had the camera on a tripod. So I didn't have to worry about any shake. I could take 3 pictures, I could move around in frame. As long as the focus didn't change, I could easily put so that there were 20 of me in this picture, and it wouldn't be that difficult of a thing. It would just be erasing some of the background around each of the characters that were standing in front of each other. So anyways, that's it for this tutorial. Keep editing, keep creating.